from soil-based farming in your mother's backyard, and you came here and set up a hydroponic farm. How did you get the system to be in place?
Okay, all right. So like I mentioned, when I started, I didn't have a lot of money. My savings were now depleted from failed projects. So hydroponics, right? It's a very it's a very good method of farming. It's it's excellent. It's clean. But the one challenge that it does have is it's got high setup costs.
Okay.
Right? Your initial setup is going to require you to shell out quite a lot of money because obviously there's a lot of equipment and pumps, right? So at that time when we decided to to convert everything to hydroponics, I started looking around, and then I found a company in South Africa in Cape Town that does hydroponic systems. There are other companies, but then I just chose this one, right? Where you just get everything together, you just assemble them, and then you start growing. So we decided there's other options where you can sort of build yourself and things like that. But we decided at the beginning it makes sense to buy something straight off the shelf and then learn from it, since we were still learning the technology, the systems and everything, and then find a way to replicate it in the future. So we had to buy one of these systems. My first system that we bought is called an NFT system, which does leafy greens. So if you can see here, this is the system. We got it from South Africa, and it's got 360 plants that you can do in there. And then the cost of getting it here from South Africa to Zimbabwe, importing it, everything, is anything between $2,000 to $2,500 for 60 plants only. So you can imagine it was quite high cost. So my
considering that you had also depleted your funds.
Definitely, but we just had to do what we had to do, right? Yes. So our first hydroponic system had 360 plants where we just grew lettuce. So it was in a small corner in a greenhouse, but we were very proud of it, right? So once it came, we just set it up, and then we went for training for hydroponics, and then we started learning about the system. The nice thing is we didn't have to do too much, right? In order to know about the system. It's just about putting the plants in and then learning from there. So that's how we initially set up, and then from then on we just grew from there.
Right. So as I was walking and I was looking at the place, I noticed you have the traditional hydroponic system that's coming from neighboring South Africa, but you also have what you call an innovation hub. Tell me a little bit about the innovation hub, because this is the core of manufacturing, of industry, of development.
Okay. So initially, when you asked who Chipudhla is, right? One of my passions is actually innovation, and I'm very technical. That's what I like to do. I like to, build things, check things out, and see how they work. So immediately when we started, we made a decision that, look, this is not very sustainable for where we want to go, because obviously we were always planning, and we are always planning to be a very big operation. So we decided, okay, fine. We are going to form another part of the company that's going to be focused solely on research and development, right? So this would then do a lot of trials, come up with different designs for different systems, right? Because our drive is to actually make our systems using locally sourced material, right? That will then cut down the costs, obviously, and will also support, Zimbabwe as we are here. If you've noticed, as everyone knows, during the COVID era, for example, you couldn't really get anything from outside for a long period of time, right? So if you were in our type of business, it was a very tricky time where you couldn't really do anything, you couldn't expand, you couldn't do much, right? So that definitely gave us the idea that, look, why not get locally sourced material? It's going to be cheaper to make the system, and it's also going to be more accessible and easier for us to get. So what we do here at Vitagrow now is, after these systems that we got from South Africa, those are our base systems, right? That's what we base everything on. And then we now do trials with different systems. If you can see, for example, this is a tower system. We did some research on it online, obviously came up with a design, checked some designs, and then we made it ourselves in-house at Vitagrow. And then this is the first version, so obviously it will have a few issues with it, some leaks, some things like that.
Let's call it the prototype.
The prototype, yes, exactly, right, or the first version, right? So that's what we do here. We come up with an idea, we try it out, and then we perfect it, right? So that if we want to now put it on the market to sell to other people, we are very confident that it will meet their needs and it won't malfunction and there'll be no issues. So our testing is very extensive and it can take anything from 6 to 12 months for each system, so that by the time we do roll it out to other people, we are very confident in it. So this system is our version 1. If you saw the other greenhouse there, that's our version 2, which is much improved now. So this one, we've been testing it for about 6 months, and then the new version for about 3 months, and within the next 5 months to 6 months, we would be happy with it. And then there's also other systems there, the vertical systems, that you can see there that we're also testing on.
So in terms of, you talked of the technicalities of setting everything up. The complete system of a hydroponic farm, obviously it uses water. But let's talk about the water system. Do I constantly need to have running water? You know, with the challenges that industry has also been facing in terms of availability of water, availability of electricity, how beneficial is the hydroponic system?
Okay, thank you for that question. Actually, that's a very good question, and that's one of the main benefits of hydroponics and why we think it's a perfect fit for countries like Zimbabwe, for example. So in Zimbabwe, obviously, our water, we've got issues with our water, some electricity and things like that, especially in the urban areas, right? So with hydroponics, one of the main benefits is all the water that you use is recycled, right? We recycle all our water, which means we use about 90% less water than normal soil-based farming. Right, in terms of things like electricity, for example, we use renewable energy. So our plant is solar powered, which means we are completely off grid. And this then helps even if there's any blackouts or any issues with the power, your farm is always on because your pumps always need to be on. Right, so I think in terms of that, it's a very sustainable way of farming for us.
Yeah. You talked of pumps. The pumps don't use electricity. There's a system that powers it all together.
So what we do is we've got different types of pumps. We've got AC and DC pumps, right? For the AC pumps, we have an inverter. So obviously we use solar panels and then inverter battery, and that runs our AC pumps. And then for the DC pumps, we've got direct, just a solar panel, just solar panels that will be running each pump. So we've got a sort of a hybrid electric solution. But the nice thing is it is completely off grid. So we don't need the electricity from the grid to run our site.
Well, a lot of farmers are actually struggling with power issues. Hydroponics has a solution, and that means going off grid and ensuring that you utilize solar power, something that Zimbabwe has in abundance. Now let's go back to the system.
Okay.
I'm seeing that this is a tower format. In terms of getting the water, we saw that with this one, it's more vertical, it's easier, which means water flows. What happens with the system for the horizontal system?
Okay, so for this one, what happens is you have a pump, right? It's really quite simple. And then inside there, you have your feeder system, right? So it comes, it pumps the water up, and then the water is dropped down through the roots of the plant, right? So as the water is dropped down, that's how the plants are feeding and taking up the nutrition. So for example, I can show you one of these heads so you can have a better look. So you see how the roots would be looking.
Okay.
As you can see, they're wet. That's how the water is coming through.
Okay.
So it's like a waterfall, really. It comes from the top and then goes through the roots. It goes back into the reservoir and then recycles again.
And this explains why it has the evergreen color.
Definitely.
And they have a deeper color, different from...
there's different types of lettuce. We specialize in a lot of lettuce. There's fancy lettuce, butter lettuce, romaine lettuce, iceberg lettuce, and they all have their different shades.
I had no idea that there are so many different types.
So many types.
But I'm here to learn. As we all are today, we're learning of the different types of lettuce that you can farm within the hydroponic system. Let's come back to the quality.
Okay.
Hydroponic system versus soil-based farming. Let's talk quality. Which is better? How do we move from the soil-based quality to the hydroponics quality? Or what can we take from the traditional soil farming to hydroponics?
Okay, so with hydroponics, the quality of produce is usually significantly higher than the soil. This is because hydroponics in its essence is a method of farming where we observe and control all the necessary metrics for a plant to grow healthy and nutritiously, right? That means we measure the nutrient uptake of the plants daily, and we make sure that we replenish it, we control the pH, right? This takes away a lot of stress from your plant, which means it's going to grow in a more stress-free environment, right? And stress causes things like bitterness to plants. For example, too little or too much nutrition actually makes a head of lettuce or any crop bitter. So sometimes in the soil it's very hard for you to measure exactly how much nutrients are getting to the plant, right? But with hydroponics, we've got all that measured daily. So that means we get a higher quality of crop, and our crop has been proven to have a longer shelf life than soil-based farming. Also, in terms of the consumer, because we are so close to our markets, there's a shorter distance from when you actually harvest the plant to when it gets to you, the consumer, be it in a restaurant, in a supermarket, in a hotel, right? So that actually that actually shows that the crop that's getting to you is of a higher quality than maybe, let's say, if you were farming on some farm maybe 60 k's away or 70 k's away. So all this, creates the whole package for hydroponic produce to be fresher and more nutritious than soil-based produce.
Right. And one of the interesting facts, you mentioned that you feed nutrients on a daily basis. How do you do this?
Okay, so what we do is we use what's called electric conductivity.
Okay.
Electric conductivity, in a nutshell, is the measure of salts dissolved in water. Right. So when you put your nutrients in the water, so ideally, if you're getting your water from a perfect water source, the EC will be 0 because there are no salts dissolved in it. Right. And then when you come with your nutrients and you put them there, your EC range goes up. So that's, as hydroponics farmers, that's the metric that we use to find out how much of our nutrients are actually in the plant. And as the water recirculates daily, the next day you check again and you see how much nutrients have been taken up by the plant, and then you replenish them.
And you said you use a water-based system, and you had earlier on explained that you also have within that water system, it's water being recycled.
Yes.
Where do you store this water, and how does it move and get to the plants?
Okay, so for each system you have to have a reservoir for each hydroponic system, right? A reservoir is just basically a water tank that can store water, and the size depends on the number of crops. So if you have a small system like this with 360 plants, you might need maybe a 100-liter tank. But if you have a vast system like this with thousands of plants, you might need a 500-liter tank. And then in each tank there's always a pump. So that pump is what moves water up through the roots, and then we use gravity, whether it's vertical gravity or slanting slope gravity, to get the water back to the reservoir. So that means it creates a loop cycle, a constant loop cycle of water.
And how often do you also clean the tanks to ensure that there is no transmission of any disease or any contamination to the plants?
So in terms of that, maybe every 3 weeks we do a process that's called flushing.
Flushing.
Right, flushing is
Like
taking...
flushing the way we do in the toilet, or
Well, yeah, okay, it can go like that, but then...
want to break down the concept?
So the concept is, we've got nutrients that are always in the tank, right? So your water never really finishes, right? You're always topping it up, you're always topping up nutrients, right? So what that does is, over time, it creates an imbalance, right? For example, you want to know that you've got... when you put your nutrients, you know how much nitrogen is in there, how much potassium, phosphorus, things like that, right? But over time, your plants take up different elements because of different environmental factors. Like when it's hotter, it takes up more of something and less of something than when it's colder. So because it's always recirculating, right, you need a time where you stop the system, you take out all the water that's there, clean the system, put fresh water, right, and then replenish it with nutrients. And that process is called flushing. So we do that once every 3 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on the size of the system.
All right. It's quite interesting. I'm learning a lot and I'm enjoying, and I know that hydroponics is now the way to go for all urban farmers, something that we would want to invest in, something that you would want to understand more. And if you're really the type that loves quality over quantity, hydroponics is the way to go. Don't go away. Join us for the next final segment, where we'll be talking harvesting, packaging, and distribution right here at Vitagrow Hydroponic Farm.